Hi, my name is Richard Gaglio, and today I'm going to be bringing you a YouTube video about a good God story that God's given me. I'm hoping that in the next several months, every Tuesday and every Friday, I'll be able to visit you again with another good God story that will uplift your spirits and give us a hope. A good God story is just a story that reflects a brief moment when God intervened in someone's life. They can be allegorical, they can be factual, they can be truth, they can be fiction. But they always are stories that brings hope to the heart and faith to the soul and in many ways enlightenment to our mind. So in the coming weeks, I look forward to visiting with you on a regular basis. And today I wanted to talk about my dad and the All-Star Game. There's a verse in Psalm 46, verses 1 and 2, and it says, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear." We all face fears, we all face troubles, and many times it's based on our families. It can be based on our jobs, hundreds of things. But God says, you come to me and you don't have to fear because I will be your refuge. The reason this verse is so important to me is because my father was a federal agent. He worked for the Justice Department, and back in the 60s and 70s, they would change his name, change his identification, and send him to another state, another city, thousands of miles away from my mother and our family, to investigate organized crime. It always presented a unique thing in our house as to when we would be able to talk to our father, when would I be able to see him. There was a sometimes fear that, thank God, my mother always put away. But there was one particular incident where I realized years later just how God will always show up. I was 11 years old. It was 1965, and the phone rang on a Friday night. Happened to be my baseball coach, the Little League baseball coach, and he said, "Richard," he goes, "I just want you to know that you have been selected for the Little League All-Star team." I thought that was great. He goes, "The game is going to be next Friday night. It's going to be under the lights, and we're going to be playing the town rival right next to us." Now, back in 1965, this is big doings, because we didn't play games under the lights. That was almost unheard of. And my mother said, "When your father calls, make sure you tell him." So that night, Dad happened to call. I told him about the game, and he said, "Son, I'm going to be at that game." I said, "Okay, Pop." And I hung up. During that week leading up to the game, we had practices and things, and every other night my dad would call and I'd talk to him and he'd say, "You know what, son? Don't you worry. I'm going to be at that game on Friday night." Eventually Friday came around. We get to the ballpark, it's 5 o'clock. We go out, my mom sits in the stands right behind home plate. I was the starting catcher, so she sat right behind home plate and saved a seat for my dad. We warmed up, had a little batting practice, and then they announced the starting lineups for the team. I looked in the stands, there's Mom, few people in the stands, no Dad. Then they announce us by name. They call out each person, each kid. We go, and I stood on the first base line, proud as could be, starting catcher. Looked in the stands, there's my mom. Empty seat next to her. Stands are almost filled up. But I knew my dad was coming. We go back, and being that we were the home team, we would take the field first. So I put on my catcher's gear, went out, I warmed up the pitcher, looked back in the stands, there's my mom. Empty seat, no dad. She smiled. Finally get done warming up, and as I reached down to pick up my mask to pull over my face, I look up to right field. And there's a man in a trench coat coming up the hill, running down the sideline by the first baseline. It was my dad. My dad showed up. But you see, all I did was smile and got down behind home plate and started to play the game. Because I knew my dad was going to show up. Because he said he would. And because he loved me. And because he was my dad. Now, years later, and I mean years later, I found out that my father left his apartment in New Orleans, Louisiana at 7 a.m., took a cab to the airport, flew from New Orleans to Washington, D.C., took a cab from the airport to the train station, took a train from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, took a cab from the train station in Philadelphia to the bus station, took a bus to a bus depot near where we lived, and then had one of his fellow agents pick him up and drop him off at my game right on time. Now, I ask you, if my earthly father would go through all of that just to see his son play in an all-star game, how much more will our Heavenly Father go through to take us through the most difficult times that we face? Know that God has your problem right in the palm of his hands. God is our refuge and ever-present help in times of trouble, and you don't have to fear, because God's going to show up, because he loves us, and he said he would, and he's our dad. That's a good God story. Hope you enjoy it. I'll see you next Friday.